to our very first session of Montessori Musings after the summer, we felt that it would be appropriate to have inspiration, which will guide us through the year of working with young children. We appreciate how challenging the post-COVID period is for most of you, and hope that this conversation, which I'm going to have with dear Margaret Ridley, will be nourishing to your spirit and will provide you with some thoughts and further commitments in your service to the child. Montessori herself tells us that our biggest task is to really serve the spirit of the child. Do you feel that that is your biggest task, Margaret, at this stage?
I think it's been my biggest task from the beginning and continues to be my biggest hurdle.
Yes, I think, yeah, carry on.
I think it is a challenge put before us by Dr. Montessori and our Montessori colleagues to constantly strive and continue that journey. I loved how you described it as a journey, Barbara. I think our spiritual work is a verb, it's not a noun. It's the idea that it's in constant evolution. And so I completely agree with that statement that you made at the beginning, that this is the most important work we need to do as Montessorians.
And I sometimes feel that the spiritual preparation of the teacher is slightly misleading because it kind of sounds finite. You prepare yourself and you are ready. I feel never ready. I feel always there is more because of the nature of the child and because of the service of the spirit of the child.
I completely agree that it is, it's such a, well, I think if we go back to even our teacher training, you know, we get consumed with learning the lessons and, you know, learning the practical details of setting up a classroom and learning the theory that we want to have in our back pocket and have solid. So first of all, I think we don't even make the time or have the time or the privilege of the time to really focus on the spiritual development of the guide. So it becomes sort of left up to us as we leave our training and start our journey as Montessori practitioners to figure that out, to make that journey. And there are constant stressors on that journey as well in our own lives, because, you know, we all are looking for more time in the day and more time in the week. And it seems to often be, not always, but often be the first thing that goes, is the time needed to step back and really assess ourselves. And then by assessing ourselves, be in a better position to be present for the children.
And I also sometimes think that we hide behind the kind of description of the spiritually prepared teacher. You are to be humble, you are to be reflective, you are to be kind and generous. But really being able to serve the spirit of the child means that we need to try to develop the potential of each individual child, irrespective of what it is. And I think that's where the biggest challenge is, because the uniqueness of the child needs to be nurtured in order for the child to be able to serve the community. And in that way, if you have got a child who is a good sweeper or good carer, rather than being academically successful, that potential should be nurtured and valued. And we might try to nurture it, but we don't always value it. And I think that is such a big question of what education is about. Is it about the academic achievement, or is it about the fulfillment and opportunity for people in order to be able to contribute?
And I think in order to do what you were just describing, Barbara, we are often blinded by our own biases. We're blinded by our own biases of what we think a child needs, what we think they need to be prepared for their life going forward, what maybe our community thinks they need, or their parents think they need. So we've got all of this noise that's also hampering us, I think, in this search for helping that individual, helping to nurture the individual potentials of the child that you described.
Yeah, and I think that for that reason, I really appreciate the quote that Aileen Wolf has chosen from Jung when she talks about the spiritual preparation, where he says, if there is anything we wish to change in the child, and that is this idea, wishing to change in the child, why should we want to change it? We should first examine it and see whether it is not something that we could better be changed in ourselves. And it is in that quote, she in a way links with Montessori, where she always says, before you critique the child, think about yourself, what are your own limitations? And yeah, that is quite challenging, isn't it?
You know, on a you know, slightly humorous, but I think somewhat connected level, it's like, you know, if we're in a relationship with somebody and there's something that drives us crazy about them, you know, like I don't know, you often hear they leave the lid off the toothpaste tube or something like that. You know, often it's actually a reflection of something that's bothersome about ourselves. And so I think, despite the flippancy of that comment, I do think there's something very relatable to, you know, exactly that comment that from Aileen Wolf, in that idea that if there is something that we are concerned about for the child and we're trying to impose upon the child, similar to Jung's work, we need to first look at ourselves. And, you know, I was thinking a little bit about Jung and all of this because, you know, not only does Jung talk about the, you know, the spiritual side, the looking at ourselves spiritually, but he also talks at some aspects of his writing about the actual physical side. What are the physical reactions we're having to a certain situation that we're seeing with a child? Is it making us want to physically do something, to go out and, you know, redirect the child when it's not appropriate or not needed? Or is it actually giving us some visceral reaction inside that we're frustrated or annoyed by? And we need to, I believe, we need to check that ourselves. What is that physical reaction we're going through, as well as the spiritual reaction? Because I believe the physical side is so connected to our spiritual side.
And young children are so tuned into our feelings and to the feelings of others. I was reminded of it only yesterday as I was walking home with my granddaughter, who is 2 and 9 years and 9 months, 2 years and 9 months old, and she saw a lonely child in the playground, and she said, "Granny, why is he sad?" Now his body demeanor was sad. He was waiting for a friend to come and play ball with him, but she was so bothered by his physicality. She kept asking, is he lonely? Does he need help? Why is he standing there? And her whole experience of that moment was taken over not by the joy of going on the zip wire, but by thinking about this other child. And we often totally underestimate children's feelings in that context. We often miss that, or miss our impact or our feelings and how they impact on the child. So I think that it is really, that's the first beginning of actually understanding ourselves a little bit better. And in that chapter on the spiritual preparation of the teacher, Aileen Wolf talks about the fact that maybe we come to know ourselves best through adverse situations, or we come to understand ourselves a little bit better through help of others. And it brings together this whole teamwork, the whole atmosphere that the setting provides for the spirit of the child. It is more than just you. It is what the environment offers. And Montessori so rightly said that the adults are part of that environment. Yeah.
I mean, I, you know, back to what you were just, the story you were telling about your granddaughter, you know, it also was registering for me as you were telling the story, you know, her noticing the other little boy who was sad, waiting for his friend, or is how much are they noticing, as you said a few minutes ago, in us? You know, when we come in with a demeanor that is tired or impatient or frustrated, and we maybe think we're pretending that it's not showing, but there's a very good chance the children absolutely recognize these things in us, even if they can't put a name on them. And so we do have such a tremendous power. I don't want to use power in the dominating sense, but power in the sense that our presence influences the child so dramatically.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's part of that knowing yourself a little bit. It's part of connecting with things that have been meaningful to you as a person on your Montessori journey. And I wondered if you were able to share some of these roots of your Montessori experience, or what does that spiritual preparation of the teacher, how does it reflect in your own Montessori journey? What have been your learnings?
Oh gosh, Barbara, when you have a long journey, there's a lot there. But you know, I think I mentioned to you and Wendelin a couple weeks ago when we were talking back and forth about our conversation today. And you know, I'm constantly reminded by my own early experiences in Montessori. So I had the very fortunate opportunity back in the 1960s to have a Montessori guide who I believe was probably the quintessential Montessori guide. Not that, I mean, this is through the eyes of a 5-year-old. So I'm sure he in fact, to this, or up until the end of his life, he protested and said, no, he was, you know, he struggled all the time and was always striving to do better. But I think it's exactly that quality that he had, a humility. He also had a spark. He had a joy. You know, he had a patience. And not to make this saintly, like you were saying a few minutes ago, and grandiose, but there was actually something very authentic about him, who then had this ability to authentically see us as the students in the classroom. And, you know, one of the things I still remember to this day, and we're talking, you know, 55 years ago, you would go up to him and ask him a question, and he would completely trust that you would have the ability to find the answer yourself and somehow redirect you to a piece of material or to a friend or to something. And I think, to me, that is the roots of my striving to be more spiritual for the children, to be more spiritual for myself. And then, you know, there's been many twists and turns along the way. I mean, there's been, you know, reading many people like Aileen Wolf or Thomas More or Carl Jung, or even Phil Gang is another one. There's many people in our world. There's people like yourselves that also inspire us in terms of our spiritual journey. And then there's also those moments. There's those moments in the classroom. There's those moments with colleagues sometimes, because as you said, Barbara, it's also a communal activity. It's one of those one of those moments where, you know, a guide or a friend or a colleague will gently point something out about yourself, that you have created a relationship and a trust that allows them to do that, and allows you to accept it. It's the moments when you see something in a child that you realize that if you had jumped in 10 seconds earlier, they would have missed that opportunity, that aha moment. The aha moment to me is a spiritual moment. That is a moment of discovery, that the child is having this opportunity to see what they can do themselves. And so I think there's so many parts of our approach that are spiritual, but one of them is even just that opportunity to step back and really allow the child's individual potential to shine forth.
And that individual potential may, again, go back to where we started, may not be what we expect.
Yeah.
What makes it the aha moment, that it is the unexpected. You know, I never forget when we had a child who came from another country to the nursery, and she would not say anything for a very long time. And we were beginning to be concerned about her capacity. And, you know, we were wondering, is she a selective mute or what is it? And the children were made a maze from the red rods and were walking in and out. And she walked out of the maze backwards perfectly. And the rest of the children clapped. So it was her creativity and her curiosity about how it would work to get out that made the children acknowledge her for her achievement. And that gave her the voice. After that, we never stopped her from talking. And it just reminded me how important the power of the group, the power of the community is, and that acknowledgement by the other children is so very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And, that sometimes we don't give the children that opportunity because we try to manage the classroom too much. Or, you know, it would have been so easy to say to her, just do it properly, walk out, you know, just, oh, be careful, you will knock the rods. The fact that it all happened without any guidance from the adult and so perfectly allowed her to be accepted or acknowledged and flourish in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And not on anybody else's timeline either. I mean, that's the other thing.
Absolutely. And, you know, I sometimes think when people say, well, walking the maze made out of the rods is not really a Montessori activity, you know, people become critical of that. But for that child, it was a celebratory moment. It was something that has made her being present so meaningful. And you know, who are we to judge what is a Montessori activity or not? If it is created and enjoyed by the children and gives them an opportunity to be curious and creative and brave. It's all those qualities are in a way part of that spiritual journey of the child. And we can't predict it. We don't know what will be meaningful to the child or not.
And I think it's a great example as well that of why we need to be very careful about what we have prescribed how the material gets used, how it, you know, what the sequence of lessons are, you know, what in fact is even in the classroom. So because there may be times when we need different things. We need the child to have different opportunities with the same material that other children haven't had. And, you know, within obviously the structure of, you know, care and respect and all those things that would be important in the environment, that, as you said, who's to say that this isn't, you know, this isn't a Montessori lesson? I mean, you know, there's so many examples of Dr. Montessori's lifetime where that material didn't even exist, or if the material did exist, it wasn't available, or. I mean, these are how all the pieces of material evolved over time, because they didn't exist at a certain point in time. And then through her observation or the observation over time of other practitioners, things evolved and were designated as suitable to equip a Montessori classroom.
Yes, yes. And that would be another very long conversation. What was there in the beginning? Why was it there? What did it look like? And what does it mean today? But thinking again about the spiritual growth of the Montessori practitioner or of the Montessori teacher, what do you think we could, how could we help our colleagues in trying to find some answers to these questions through perhaps teamwork or through the classroom collaboration between the adults? Would you have any hints or guidance?
I think personally, Barbara, before I answer that question, I think the first thing we need to do, I think we need to do our own preparation. We need to create space in our own minds to be open to something different or something new or whatever. So, I do think we need to ensure or reestablish practices, even if it's 5 minutes a day, to prepare ourselves before we go into an environment, or at the end of the day, or reflective practice, meditative practice, yoga practice, all these things. And I'm sure they've been spoken about many times before we go into these situations, to figure out how to create collaboration in our environments, or collaboration with the children, or collaboration through STEAM. That would be my first recommendation. And then I would say, specific to the question that just was posed, I think the important things again would be to be in constant dialogue with our colleagues. If you're in a small program, or a small nursery, or a small environment, in terms of, if there's only 1 or 2 of you, then certainly regular conversation needs to happen. But I think it's important that you are part of bigger communities, like Montessori Musings, because we are only better together. Then we cannot do this work on our own, and we can't necessarily see ourselves. We need mirrors to be held up to us. So I think that's a really important thing, is just that we are creating collaborative time to then talk about what we're seeing in the children, to talk about what we're seeing that might be related to science and technology and engineering and arts and math and all the things associated with STEAM. I mean, I think, again, in our society, or at least in North American society, we have a fairly narrow definition of what STEAM or STEM even is, and not realizing there's a lot of exploratory work, experimental work that the child is doing just in the classroom, just with the material, just with the red rods walking backwards, that actually is a form of scientific discovery.
Yes, and I think that I have been saddened a little bit by the more recent tendency to deliver the curriculum, to deliver the prescribed content of the albums, because that in a way limits children's opportunities for those discoveries. It limits aha moments, because we put too much pressure on achievement rather than on the exploration and really getting to know the child better, and giving them time to do what they need to do. This idea of time, particularly in the first plane of development, is really, really vital, because it takes so long to grow in physical competence. It takes so long to grow in capacity to express your ideas and your thoughts. And all those are essential in learning, and essential for the child to feel part of a community, to have a sense of belonging to the first experience of being away from home.
Back when you were talking a second ago about the exploration and the sticking to the curriculum and being very, outcome driven, I guess, is almost maybe the other partner of all of that, and that is problematic. I see it in elementary as well, as an elementary trainer, and that is a lot of emphasis on, you know, getting to the formula, getting to the end result of this lesson or this piece of material. And what I find is really important to continually bring home to ourselves and to the guides in training, and that is, and even to, you know, practitioners who've been in the classroom for years, it is the process of discovery. It is the process of experimentation. It is these things that are actually helping prepare the child for the uncertain, for the situations that have not been prescribed. And if everything we give them has a, you know, tried and true path, then how on earth can they cope when something is unexpected or when something has not been prepared for them? And so I think we need to, at all ages, but particularly the 0 to 6, very much celebrate and honor and give space for that exploration and discovery, with the lessons, with the material, with even, you know, bringing in pieces of nature. You know, this is the time of year you can bring in the hazelnuts and the walnuts and just putting them on a nature table and just allowing the children time to explore. There's no end result to that activity. And I think maybe that's another piece to think about. I hadn't thought about it until right now, but maybe we need to ensure there are more things in our classrooms and our environments that don't have an end result specifically. They are very open-ended, and then that may be, because there's no path, no prescribed path, that may actually encourage the child to spend more time with the discovery process.
Yes, and also perhaps listening more to what the child has to say as they explore, because it is the capacity to hear what the child says that may allow us to find other little keys, other little doors to open for them, because it will reflect their level of understanding and their level of interest and curiosity. So I have noticed that within the last couple of years, virtually everybody we have had in conversations on Montessori Musings has talked about the importance of curiosity, not only curiosity of the child, but also curiosity of the adult, and perhaps nurturing the spirit of the child really goes with having an ongoing curiosity about what this child is all about. I don't know this child, but what will I learn about them? And you don't really learn by asking them too many questions. You learn so much more by listening and hearing the things that are important to them. So perhaps the same applies to adults when we work with our colleagues in order to develop level of trust and encourage that spiritual journey of each individual within your team. Being a good listener to their stories will also provide opportunities for that spiritual growth, or the growth of the potential of the person as a teacher, as a person, as a mother. There's so many benefits to feeling satisfied sometimes with what we are able to give the children or what we are able to share with our colleagues.
And listening is, listening's the underrated part of communication. You know, we spend lots of time talking and, as you said, asking questions, but not always enough time. And sometimes we need to flip it. We need to spend, 2/3 of our time listening or 3/4 of our time listening rather than speaking or asking questions. Because if we are doing the talking, and I'm saying this very consciously as I'm talking here right now, but if we're doing the talking, that's imposing our ideas in the moment. That's asking the questions that we want to know, but that may not be the story the child wants to tell us right now. that may not be the detail that was important last night. It's something that happened at home. And so it does, the inability to listen crowds out the opportunities to really hear what is deep seated in the child at that moment in time. And it's true also of being with each other. It is so important to create space for this, time for this, to also create quiet for it, because sometimes it's not going to come out initially in that conversation with you. It might, with another person, it might be going back to that conversation over and over. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I'm trying to think of who it was, but it was sort of it was a conversation about, you know, again with friends or couples or whatever, where you would go back and ask the question, but each time ask it, is there more? Is there more? Is there something else about this you haven't told me yet? And so it's a very short question, but it's getting underneath the layers of really what that person wants to share with you, and maybe even doesn't know yet they want to share it with you.
Yeah. And it's sometimes you unravel some of the layers of the hidden meanings behind the conversations, or, you know, why something is irritating or something is enjoyable. Maybe as we are kind of considering this, what we need to do, how important do you think laughter is in our spiritual preparation as teachers or as guides to the children?
Aileen Wolf said we need wonder and awe. And I would attach to that joy, and part of joy, an expression of joy, is laughter.
Yeah.
So I think it's a number of things, Barbara, that we need to be considerate of, and be sure that we are comfortable to express, but also to create space again for us to be awe-inspired by what we see before us with the child, to laugh with them, to be joyful with them, to celebrate with them, you know, their aha moments or their discoveries. And if they don't see us, I mean, we are the models. If they don't see us expressing these emotions, then they may be less frequently comfortable to express them themselves. I mean, I don't think children are as hampered by that at this point, particularly 0 to 6. You know, they're much more spontaneous, and so hopefully they would just spontaneously express joy and laughter in these things. But if they see us doing it, they are absolutely more likely to do it. And I think that's an important quality of our classrooms. It's an important quality of our relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a good place to stop our conversation, because we could give it to our audience now and ask them what they understand about spiritual preparation. What does it mean for them to nurture the spirit of the child? It would be, as with all these Montessori musing conversations, we always try to plant some seeds for people to explore. But that idea of joy, wonder, curiosity, of being with children and being with other adults probably lies at the heart of the spirit of the child and our service to the spirit of children. Thank you so much, Margaret. It's, as always, it is so wonderful to share in your wisdom and in your experience. And thank you for giving us your time, particularly at this moment when you are still suffering from your COVID, yet you have got up early in the morning, got yourself ready, and here we are benefiting from this beautiful, beautiful conversation. So thank you so very much.
Well, thank you to you both for your work for Montessori Musings, and for the inspiration you've both always given me, but also to your whole community for the ongoing work we all do collectively. I mean, this is, as I said a few minutes ago, this is the work of the collective. It's not any single person's torch to bear. We are doing this all together, and together, I believe we're stronger in this work. So thank you.
Beautiful words to finish on. Thank you.